The girl widened her eyes, shoved a coin into the vending machine, and then a bottle of Coke dropped out. Just as she reached out to grab it, a strange man behind her snatched it away and downed it in one gulp right in front of her. Facing this sudden offense, not only did the girl not get angry, she immediately took the empty bottle, and even after he left, her face was still lit up with a happy smile. This was because last night, the girl had come to the convenience store and bought a can of Coke, but only after leaving did she realize she'd forgotten her Coke. So she returned to the store entrance, only to encounter a scruffy-looking stranger blocking her way. Mistakenly thinking he had taken her Coke, she grabbed it from him, downed it in one gulp right before his eyes, then tossed him the empty bottle as a challenge before turning and walking away coolly, leaving the utterly bewildered man behind. However, when the girl boarded the bus, she discovered her wallet was missing. She had to return to the convenience store, where the clerk saw her and produced both her wallet and her Coke. It wasn't until then that she realized how rude she had been, so she hurried outside to give him the Coke. But the stranger was already gone. She thought this was just a fleeting, awkward encounter, never imagining the connection between them would go much further. As the daughter of a real estate tycoon, her father often forced her to accompany him on work inspections. Although she usually scoffed at this routine, little did she know this particular outing would illuminate her life going forward. In just a fleeting moment, Sujin spotted the boy from last night, various construction tools hanging from his body, though their social statuses were worlds apart. Even as his figure retreated into the distance, she couldn't help but steal another glance, a fondness blossoming in her heart right then. For some reason, she felt a strong pull towards this man, and in the days that followed, this scruffy figure would inexplicably appear before her eyes again. One day, a project Sujin was responsible for urgently needed a temporary worker, so she called her father for help, and he quickly found her a suitable candidate. But the moment the elevator doors opened, she saw the familiar yet unfamiliar face once more. Sujin quickly turned her head away. Remembering her arrogance that night, she awkwardly hid in her office, only to peek out moments later, watching the boy discuss wall designs with a colleague. Even Sujin herself didn't expect that just a simple gesture of his could make her stare, captivated. Without realizing it, his strong, powerful physique quickly drew her in, perhaps seeking a chance to apologize. Sujin went to the vending machine and bought a Coke, but just as she reached for it, the boy behind her snatched it away, downed it in one gulp right in front of her, then let out a satisfied burp, echoing her challenge from that night. To all of this, she could only obediently take the empty bottle, and even as she left, her face was radiant with a bright smile. Yet, just as she was preparing to hail a taxi home, a speeding motorcycle zoomed past and snatched her purse. Cheol-soo, just ahead, saw it all. Without hurry, he pushed open his car door, and the thief was sent flying. This chance heroic rescue invisibly drew the two closer. Watching the thief flee in panic, they both chuckled and shared understanding. Then, under Sujin's gaze, Cheol-soo repaired the broken strap on her purse, but his own car window was shattered from the impact. He had to remove it entirely, then secured Sujin in the passenger seat with a makeshift device. Even with the fierce wind whipping through the car while driving, he could steady himself using the handhold. This bizarre scene drew strange looks from passing cars, yet the two of them thoroughly enjoyed the breeze. What Cheol-soo didn't expect was that Sujin, far from putting on the airs of a spoiled rich girl, would even wear the ugly safety helmet he used for work. In Sujin's eyes, though this man wasn't much of a talker, he gave her an overwhelming sense of security. The next day, she put on beautiful makeup, dreaming of her next encounter with Cheol-soo. However, when she arrived at the studio, a colleague unexpectedly informed her that yesterday's worker had been transferred back by her father. Sujin's heart sank when she heard the news. That evening, she deliberately walked past Cheol-soo's usual eating spot with a few friends in tow. Seeing the beauties approach, his co-workers stared intently, but Cheol-soo remained focused on fiddling with something in his hands. At that moment, one of the girls suddenly turned. She saw Cheol-soo's indifference to their looks, and silently vowed to spend her life with him.
뭐야? 아는 사람들이야? 여기 계시더라고요.
With just one look from Cheol-soo, his co-workers quickly made space for them. Even though the people at the other table were drinking and chatting merrily, the two of them remained quiet, because under the table, they had already silently pledged their lives to each other. Only after the crowd had dispersed did Cheol-soo fill Sujin's glass with alcohol, and then he spoke his uniquely sincere confession.
마시면 우리 사귀는 거다.
안 마시면?
별일 없는 거지.
As the strong liquor flowed down their throats, they fully confirmed their feelings for each other. Afterwards, Cheol-soo began paying attention to his appearance, and they lived a happy life like most couples. Cheol-soo would whisper sweet nothings in her ear and teach her how to play baseball. Their lives were no longer monotonous. They would embrace freely on bustling street corners and whisper their hearts out to each other. To make their future path smoother, Cheol-soo even signed up for the architect license exam. Soo-jin's unusual behavior these days didn't escape her father's notice. He asked to meet her boyfriend, but this request was quickly and flatly refused by Cheol-soo, perhaps hindered by his own perceived status. He currently lacked the courage to face Soo-jin's parents, but if they wanted to enter the marriage hall, they had to pass this hurdle first. Yet no matter how Soo-jin tried to persuade him, Cheol-soo couldn't accept what he saw as his own inadequacy. Even with Soo-jin standing before him with tear-reddened eyes, he remained unmoved. So one day, she tricked Cheol-soo into coming out for a meal and then called her parents to join them. The moment Cheol-soo saw the boss, he immediately averted his eyes. If Soo-jin hadn't grabbed his hand, he might have tried to flee the awkward scene. Seeing the reluctance on Cheol-soo's face, Soo-jin sadly got up to go to the restroom, completely missing the stiff expression on her father's face. He hadn't expected the man who had so captivated his daughter to be one of his own employees. He couldn't accept his daughter being with someone he saw as having no future. He immediately ordered Cheol-soo to stay away from his daughter and, in a fit of anger, fired him on the spot. Just then, however, Cheol-soo heard Soo-jin's name called outside. He anxiously ran out and discovered Soo-jin lying motionless on the ground. It turned out Soo-jin, mistakenly thinking Cheol-soo didn't want to marry her, had walked out alone into the heavy rain after using the restroom and for some reason suddenly collapsed. Cheol-soo quickly picked her up and ran desperately towards the hospital, uncaring of anything else. Seeing this scene, Soo-jin's father, who had followed, stood frozen in place for a long time, a flicker of shock in his eyes. At that moment, he silently acknowledged this man in his heart. Fortunately, the examination revealed Soo-jin only had slight anemia and was otherwise fine. The moment she opened her eyes and saw Cheol-soo, she could no longer contain her longing and hugged him tightly. Her father knew he could no longer stop the two who loved each other, and soon they entered the wedding hall. In the moment their eyes met, they finally welcomed the dawn of their love. Although Cheol-soo soon after passed the architect license exam as he wished and received career support from Soo-jin's father, with everything moving in a positive direction, fate's plan was far less kind than they imagined. Gradually, Soo-jin began to discover with horror that she often forgot the way home. When she mentioned this to her friends, they even joked if her nights were too tiring, not realizing Soo-jin was actually stepping closer to an abyss. That evening, having just arrived home, she once again forgot everything. Anxiously, she opened the door before her but couldn't recognize the decor at all. Only when Cheol-soo came out of the room did she remember everything, but to find out if forgetfulness was the cause, she secretly went to the hospital for a checkup. After scans, the doctor diagnosed her condition.
뭐랄까, 알츠하이머병에 걸렸어.
What Soo-jin never expected was that at only 27 years old, she was suffering from early-onset dementia. Although medication could slow the progression of her symptoms, the doctor still cautioned her that she would lose her ability to care for herself. She should stop working now because soon she would forget everything. She would slowly lose her cognitive abilities. Her memories would gradually fade away. For her, right in the midst of happiness, this was undoubtedly a devastating blow. Yet even now, she chose to bear this pain alone, and she cherished the time she had with Cheol-soo even more intensely. So that evening, Soo-jin told Cheol-soo she wanted to quit her job to stay home with him, and whatever decision she made, Cheol-soo always supported her choice. This love had long since flowed with their blood deep into the core of their beings. Although they still played card games as usual, the warmer and happier the scene, the more Soo-jin would inappropriately hide in a corner and weep bitterly. To avoid forgetting the person she loved most, Soo-jin started drawing Cheol-soo in a notebook every day. She would gaze at the drawings for a long time. Although she later quit her job to stay home, she would still look at him with deep reluctance every time he was about to leave for work. Because from now on, Soo-jin would treat every day as if it were her last with Cheol-soo. One lunchtime, Cheol-soo was eating with his co-workers as usual. Urged by his colleagues, he opened the lunchbox Soo-jin had prepared for him, but it was filled entirely with plain rice. Recalling his wife's recent strange behavior, Cheol-soo felt a sudden dread. He rushed to the hospital she frequented and finally learned the truth about her illness from the doctor, but he simply couldn't accept that his wife was suffering such devastation. Enraged, he pinned the doctor against the wall, only stopping when a nurse who rushed over told Cheol-soo that the doctor's own wife had died from the same disease, slowly calming the fury in his heart. Meanwhile, Soo-jin, who was walking, suddenly stopped. She stared blankly at her surroundings, unable to remember what she was doing, and even when she took out her phone, she didn't know how to use it. Finally, she could only curl up alone on a street corner and cry. A passing police officer helped her up, but to the officer's kind inquiries, Soo-jin had no answers. She forgot where her home was, and even who she was. Only when she saw the figure of her first love in the crowd did Soo-jin seem to remember everything. She told the officer this was her husband, only to have this man before her express his long-held wish to reunite with her. Soo-jin was deeply confused. They were together every day, but the moment she voiced her bewilderment, she immediately sank back into thought. After a moment, she realized the absurdity of her actions because she remembered everything once more, and this illness plunged her into despair again and again. That night, she came to the baseball field where she used to play with Cheol-soo, only to find that he had coincidentally arrived at the stadium at the same moment. When they saw each other again, a shadow of sorrow had deepened on both their faces.
나 곧 모든 거 잊어버리게 될 거야. 자기가 내 옆에 있어도 왜 있는지도 모르게 된다고. 내 머릿속엔 자기가 없는 거야. 영혼도 사라지는 거야.
The unfairness of fate meant they were about to face life's devastation, yet even so, they refused to bow to heaven.
영혼이 왜 사라져? 일어나. 다 나한테 맡겨. 내가 네 기억이고 네 마음이야. 알았지?
From then on, Cheol-soo recorded every detail of their life daily, posting these notes everywhere his eyes could see, and Soo-jin would also look through their photo album every day, desperate to etch their faces into her mind. Although Cheol-soo helped her remember everything around her every single day, in just the blink of an eye, she would forget it all again. It was clearly their wedding anniversary, yet she would look at the marked red date with curiosity. Suddenly, a knock came at the door. Though the face that greeted her wasn't Cheol-soo's, Soo-jin's face still lit up with joy, mistaking her first love for Cheol-soo once more. Just as her first love tried to take advantage and commit an indecent act, Cheol-soo arrived home at that moment. Seeing the scoundrel about to violate his wife, he punched him to the ground. Unexpectedly, Soo-jin started pulling him back from behind, forcing Cheol-soo to shove her aside, leaving a stark wound on his own shoulder. He ignored it and continued dragging the scoundrel outside, beating him relentlessly. Stepping outside, Soo-jin watched everything silently, seeming to recall something, yet never quite reaching it. Just as it seemed a life might be lost, Soo-jin's father appeared before them, and Soo-jin collapsed behind him at that very moment. To avoid ruining Cheol-soo's future, her father decided to take Soo-jin away, but Cheol-soo stubbornly insisted on keeping her by his side. While they were arguing, Soo-jin suddenly stood before them once more, and by this time, she had lost control of her bladder. Seeing this, Cheol-soo quickly pulled her back inside, then took off his own clothes to cover her lower body. Even now, he prioritized Soo-jin's dignity. Although he ultimately convinced his father-in-law, he often wept alone at night. Yet despite this, Cheol-soo never gave up on his beloved. He continued helping his wife remember everything as usual. But one day, as he was about to leave for work, she called him by the wrong name.
영미 씨.
응?
사랑해.
나도.
Only when he opened the door did the accumulated pain in his heart finally erupt. Returning inside, Soo-jin looked at the notes covering the walls. Finally, her gaze settled on a photo of them together, and she remembered everything. Recalling the name she had just uttered, she couldn't accept that she had hurt her loved one so deeply. When Cheol-soo returned home that evening, Soo-jin was gone, leaving only the empty room and a farewell letter.
내가 결국 당신 마음 아프게 하네요. 철수 씨, 사랑하는 철수 씨. 제발 오해하지 마세요. 난 당신만을 사랑해요. 당신만을 생각해요. 당신만을 기억해요. 할 말이 너무 많은데 내 마음 다 보여주고 싶은데 기억이 남아있는 이 짧은 시간 동안 어떻게 내 마음을 전할 수 있을까? 마음이 급해요. 나 김수지는 당신 최철수만을 사랑합니다. 이것만 잊고 싶지 않은데 잊으면 안 되는데 당신도 내 마음 알고 있죠? 당신도 내 마음 느끼고 있죠? 기억이 또 사라질까봐 두려워요. 내 마음 다 얘기하고 싶은데 다 보여주고 싶은데 사랑해요. 미안해요. 건망증 때문에 당신을 만났고 바로 그 건망증 때문에 당신을 떠났어요. 당신을 만난 건 내 일생 최고의 행운이었어요.
수진아.
당신은 하늘이 내게 주신 가장 소중한 선물이에요. 나는 당신을 기억하지 않아요. 당신은 그냥 나한테 스며들었어요.
However, when Cheol-soo went to her father's office, he was met with divorce papers. Without a moment's hesitation, Cheol-soo tore them to shreds, though her father urged him to pull himself together, to focus on work and his future. What meaning did his life and future hold without Soo-jin? During Soo-jin's absence, Cheol-soo would stare blankly at their photos every day, as if a huge part of his life was missing. He went to the baseball stadium, swinging fiercely at every pitch, because in those moments, he could always see her sweet figure, though it was ultimately just an illusion. Yet their connection was far from over. One day, returning home, Cheol-soo found a letter his wife had written for him. Soo-jin had written this while she could still remember everything. She expressed gratitude for still being able to recall it all, yet despair that this might be the last time she could write to him. In it, Soo-jin wrote down everything she could temporarily remember, from their awkward first encounter to their wedding day, from their shared joys and sorrows to the despair and pain of her illness. All of it seemed permanently etched in her mind, yet vanished in an instant like dust in the wind. Finally, following the address on the envelope, Cheol-soo found this seaside hospital. Guided by a doctor, he arrived at Soo-jin's room. The room's decor was starkly simple, save for one item holding their shared memories. As Cheol-soo moved past the curtain, he saw the face he longed for once more. Soo-jin was drawing in a sketchbook. Every page was filled with images of Cheol-soo's face, but each drawing represented her memory fading further, signifying the relentless progression of her illness.
감사합니다.
저 부르시겠어요?
누구시죠?
처음 뵙겠습니다. 최철수라고 합니다.
My love for you is as certain as the sky and earth, as clear as the sun and moon. If in your memory there is an eraser that, at the stroke of midnight every night, ruthlessly wipes away our shared memories, then I wish to transform into a million pencils. Before dawn arrives, I will write through the night, filling pages with the story of our happiness, until the seas run dry and the rocks crumble to dust, until the end of time itself.